Anyway, I'm joined now by National Review contributing editor, former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy. He's also a senior fellow at the National Review Institute and author of Faithless Execution, Building the Political Case for Obama's Impeachment. Hello, Andy.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Oh, boy. Well, thanks for coming back so soon after your last appearance. I couldn't think of anybody better than you to talk about this with. So you wrote a piece today. You've written about it over the weekend. Of course, we've heard from the former Attorney General, Eric Holder. I've also seen another former Attorney General, Gonzalez, and both have been critical of what Comey did in the letter to the Congress on Friday. Where were you?
Well, I think that I'd have a lot more interest in what they have to say now if they had made their comments back in July. You know, what they're critical of is that Comey has departed from law enforcement protocol to make public statements about pending criminal investigation in which charges haven't been filed. It's all well and good to say that that's against the normal protocols of law enforcement, but they were. I would say the silence was deafening back in July when Comey commented on a criminal investigation in which charges hadn't been filed in order to make a decision that isn't the FBI's to make, that she shouldn't be indicted, and Steve, to say that the investigation is closed, which is something that the government generally doesn't confirm or deny the existence of an investigation, and you don't have a right to know it's closed because saying it's closed is virtually meaningless. If a new witness comes forward, a new information comes out, which frequently happens, it's not even a difficult administrative matter to reopen an investigation. Right. So, where were these people back in July when Comey was doing exactly the same thing he did now?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And you point out the hypocrisy in your piece. Comey is not the one whose unorthodox actions are casting a cloud over the election at National Review. Everybody should go read it. That you're right. Comey overstepped his bounds as the head of the FBI in saying that no prosecutor would dare prosecute this case. People like you and others came forward, and so did former Attorney General Gonzalez, who told me that he was shocked and disagreed with. So he did go on the record as being against what Comey said at that point. Just so we clear that up. But Harry Reid, and no surprise here, and really you shouldn't take anything Harry Reid says seriously, but Harry Reid did say that, and others have jumped on board, calling for Comey's resignation and saying, as Harry Reid did, that he broke the law, Comey broke the law by violating the Hatch Act, which prohibits law enforcement from influencing an election 60 days out to the fruition of the election. Any credence to that whatsoever in your mind?
Nah, it's idiotic. Look, political corruption investigations, I know this is the late-breaking news, but they're political. And when there are developments in them, they tend to be political developments, or at least illegal developments that have political consequences. You can't avoid the fact that a corruption investigation is infused with politics. And that's one of the reasons, Steve, that the prudent thing for law enforcement to do is don't make any comments at all. And if no comments had been made in July, there'd be no need to be making comments now. But it wasn't proper to take the steps that were taken in July to say the investigation was closed with no charges. Simply nothing should have been said, which is what generally speaking happens. They took what Comey said back then and contorted it into an exoneration of Mrs. Clinton.
Right.
In fact, what he said was that this kind of conduct, even if it didn't get prosecuted, is the sort of thing that gets people fired and at least gets their security clearances taken away from them. Anyway, I didn't hear the Democrats complaining about it then. And all he said last week, I want to point out to people, he hasn't implicated Mrs. Clinton in a single crime with respect to what he said last week. He simply said the investigation is still open. And when you engage in egregious misconduct, as Mrs. Clinton has, you tend to be under investigation, and you don't have a right to know when the investigation is closed.
Absolutely correct. Let me ask you a couple of scenarios here. Scenario number one, Hillary wins the election and Barack Obama pardons her and Uma and everything else. Does that end the investigation? That's question number one. So why don't we go from there?
Well, a pardon wouldn't end the investigation in the sense that what's the point of investigating if no crime can be prosecuted? But I don't see that happening.
You don't see Obama issuing a pardon if she wins?
Why would he have to if she's going to then be in charge of the Justice Department?
Okay. Could she pardon herself if she's indicted as president?
Who would indict her?
Well, that's that's true too. I mean, we already know the Justice Department didn't want the Clinton Foundation investigation to go ahead on many levels, according to the FBI.
All power in the executive branch belongs to the president, and the attorney general and the FBI director and everyone else serve at the pleasure of the president. The president isn't going to authorize the indictment of the president. It's not going to happen.
If she loses, rather, would Obama, pardon her? Do you think?
He might. He's pardoning just about everybody else. Why not?
And going back to the other one, let's just say I don't know how, but let's say she wins. The FBI or somehow she's indicted, okay, or she's pardoned. All right? Let's say Obama does pardon her because he doesn't want any constitutional crisis, doesn't want any possibility. She's pardoned. This was a witch hunt. Blah blah blah. Okay, can the Congress impeach her? Even though for these things, could they bring up things that they see as crimes and misdemeanors, even though she's been pardoned?
Yes. The impeachment doesn't have to be based on criminal offenses. It's a breach of trust. That's why I've been arguing that she should be impeached already.
Right.
Based on what she did as Secretary of State, even absent all of this other stuff. But yes, in fact, the Constitution, Steve, says that if a person has been impeached, he can be also subject to prosecution in the criminal justice system, and that underscores it in the Constitution. These are totally separate.
Okay, we got 1 minute left. If Hillary's if any classified emails wound up in the possession of Anthony Weiner, is Hillary and/or Uma in big trouble?
I don't see why, Steve, because they have already proved that classified information ended up in all kinds of places where it had no business being. And what Comey and the Justice Department rationalized was that they didn't have the intent to violate the law. Now, I thought that was totally wrong, but what I think makes no difference. That's their view of it.
Right.
So I don't see why it would make any difference that there's yet another place where it turned up where it shouldn't.
Andy, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, folks, you remember the original Daisy ad that Lyndon Johnson used against Barry Goldwater? Well, the ad is back, courtesy of Hillary Clinton, of course. We'll be talking about that and a whole lot more with Julio Rivera and Kurt Schlichter as the panel is next. Keep it here.